that's why you see so many people are having issues in their relationships, because your core wounds from your childhood directly impact your attachment styles as an adult in relationships. And you see so many relationships breaking down because people are carrying so many core wounds from their childhood that they're unaware of. And they don't understand their attachment styles and what's playing out. Yes, I'm not saying if you're drinking or taking drugs that you are suppressing a trauma, but generally people who are drinking and taking drugs are running away from something. People that go through like a trauma like sexual assault or a PTSD like war and things like that, generally people don't want to relive what's happening. They don't want to go through what they went through again, because it's that fear. It was such a scary thing that happened. It's that fear of having it to come out and having to acknowledge it, having to admit it. And especially with sexual assault, there's so much shame that can be around sexual assault, so much guilt. I blamed myself for a really long time. I had a really awful time with the police. They weren't very helpful at all. So there was so much that happened that made me feel like it was my fault. And I find that time and time again when I see clients that have had sexual assault and sexual abuse, that they often blame themselves. There's a very big stigma around sexual assault and sexual abuse, and that the person who's actually the victim is often blamed, not the perpetrator. So it was the first time I'd spoken about it to people since it had probably happened, and it just the sense of relief saying it out loud was huge. It's like something like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. And then that was when I had to start feeling it. So I had to start feeling the feelings and the emotions that I'd pushed away. So acknowledging the fear, acknowledging the pain, acknowledging the fact of what actually happened to me, instead of just ignoring it. We're down here we're experiencing love, hate, fear, anger, everything we're here to experience. And there's always going to be a polarity, maybe not. I found it really freeing because I get to, if I'm here experiencing, then I'm going to choose to experience it at my deepest levels, all of it. So when I am feeling maybe flat or sad, I'm going to experience it and move through it. I'm not going to deny it or ignore it. When I'm feeling happy, I'm going to be super grateful for it. And I'm going to be grateful each time I walk out the door and it's a beautiful day. It's raining. I'm going to be grateful that it's raining and I might dance in the rain. It's just a freeing experience. I live very differently to how I used to. I used to see the world in a very different eyes. I am the happiest I've ever been. And I feel like I'm the freest I've ever been. I feel empowered in my life. I feel like I'm creating my life. Life's not happening to me. I'm creating what's going on. And I like that. I like that. And that means I'm responsible for what's going on in my life. So if something isn't how I want it, then what am I going to do to make the change so that it is how I want it?
Let your light shine. Help others find their way out of the darkness. Extraordinarily inspiring stories from ordinary people like you and I.
What would you call yourself? A shamanic healer?
Yeah, so I'm a shamanic healer and a hypnotherapist, a trauma-informed counselor, a somatic release practitioner, and an NLP practitioner. So I'm a multi-modality therapist. So I like to work with people on all three levels, so their mind, their body, and their spirit. So traumas and emotional wounds live at all three levels. And people often tend to just go and see maybe an energy healer, or maybe they'll just go to a counselor, or maybe they'll just go to a hypnotherapist. And the thing is, it's so powerful when you combine all of these together, because you're going to get bigger and quicker transformations.
Your mission is to restore your health, wealth, happiness, and success. And I thought, wow, that's everything in it. I pretty much can just come to you and then get everything. How did you get into shamanic healing? First of all,
I experienced my own trauma from when I was younger, and through my own healing and going through that healing process, I discovered that I had a real passion for holistic health. And first of all, I had a shamanic healing and I thought, this is amazing. What is this? I also had undergone some hypnotherapy as well, and I really enjoyed that. And I was like, right, all these, and I was going to different modalities for, to help with my past trauma. And I found, but I was only going to one at a time. So I found that I was getting breakthroughs and moving forward. So I started them. So first of all, I studied doing the shamanic. So I've studied with some and worked with a number of shamans and done some shamanic work there, learning about the art of shamanic journeying, and the art of journeying to the soul, collecting soul parts, clearing past lives, accessing those different planes so that you can help energetically for people, clearing out their traumas from this lifetime, last lifetimes, their ancestral traumas as well, because it's all coming through energetically. Working with plant medicine, so understanding the benefits of plant medicine, how that can benefit people on their healing journey as well. I then, whilst I was doing that, I was also studying to be a counselor. So I wanted another formal kind of education as well around that. So I was studying to be a counselor. I then became a trauma-informed counselor because I was the counseling aspect is only a very basic part of it. By adding on the trauma, I'm a lot more informed around trauma work, so how trauma and PTSD can affect the system, how it interacts with the nervous system, how to regulate the nervous system, etc. And then that tied into the somatic work. So then I trained to do somatic release. So that's working with the body, the cellular body, working with the nervous system, working to regulate the nervous system, the polyvagal theory and everything around that. And then I also was studying to do hypnotherapy because I find that really interesting, talking to the subconscious mind. A lot of our past wounds, so childhood wounds, live in the subconscious mind, and we're reacting from the subconscious mind 95% of the time. So if we're operating in a wounded state from our inner child, we're reacting to circumstances and experiences from this wounded state. And that's why you see so many people are having issues in their relationships, because your core wounds from your childhood directly impact your attachment styles as an adult in relationships. And you see so many relationships breaking down because people are carrying so many core wounds from their childhood that they're unaware of, and they don't understand their attachment styles and what's playing out. And it's all coming from the subconscious mind. So hypnotherapy is great for accessing that. And then NLP is my newest one. That was around linguistic programming. So again, it's to do with the subconscious mind. It's to do how you talk to yourself and talk to others, and also reprogramming the subconscious mind to change the script or the narrative that you might be playing. So we often have limiting beliefs that are from our childhood or from our teenage years. So it's about correcting those limiting beliefs and changing the script around that. So all together, it comes together in this great multifaceted sessions that I hold, which are great because I'm working with energetically with the shamanic work, working with the cellular body with somatic release, and then working at the cognitive level with the hypnotherapy and the NLP.
One-stop shop for everything you want in life. That's so amazing. All right, I'm gonna talk a few things, just one at a time. You said about your trauma. I guess a lot of people will have, but I actually didn't. I only recently I've been talking with my friends about trauma, in particularly childhood, and then I never. Because I feel like, oh, my childhood's pretty good, and my parents are nice and everything wonderful. And until one of my friends said, do you know, trauma is not like a big thing, like you've been abused or sexually abused, or you lost your parents or anything. And it could be something like someone said, I don't like you. And then I never look at that as a trauma. Even I talked to some of my friends and they said, I don't have any trauma. But yeah, it's just a different, how I guess it's more educational to people. We don't know much about it.
Absolutely. So trauma is a word that's described to how it impacted you on an emotional level. So trauma can be something like your parents breaking up. So then when your parents break up, there is this, can be leaving a core wound of abandonment and rejection. Now, abandonment and rejection sound like really hectic words as an adult. You're like, oh, I wasn't abandoned. But when you're a child, so from 0 to around 8 years old, our brain hasn't fully developed. So when something happens, so all we can really get our head around is our whole world is our family. So our caregivers or our parents. So if something happens to that family, so say if the parents separate, we take that very personally because we cannot comprehend what's going on in the outside world. It's just in our family unit. So when a parent breaks up, we take this personally. We think that we've caused it. We think that maybe mum or dad doesn't love us anymore, or that we're not worthy and they've left because of us. So they end up being this emotional wound for us. But as we grow up as an adult, you understand, they go, oh, mum and dad broke up because they didn't love each other and it was the best thing to do anyway. But as a child, when that wound was created, you didn't understand that, but that can still impact you in your adult life. So yeah, a lot of people don't realize that little things like, well, I mean, I know parents separating isn't a little thing, but that can have a huge impact on you in adult life. And it can be little things like maybe dad works away a lot. So dad, you know, has to work 60-hour weeks, or he works away on FIFO or whatever it is. We know as adults, dad was doing that so he could put food on the table and pay the bills. As a child, you can't comprehend that. You don't know what a job is or paying the bills. You just, your family unit is all that you know. So dad goes away for 3 weeks and you think it's because you've done something. Even when you're told dad's at work, you can think, well, does dad work all the time because I'm not good enough, or he doesn't love me, or I've done something wrong? Yeah. And it's really interesting because you don't think like that as an adult, but as a child, that's how you process information, is literally your family unit.
That's also how interesting I feel, or maybe I just I start to know. And in the past, I never heard of, well, I didn't hear much about trauma, but now it's like everyone's talking about trauma and how it's impacting us. When did you first get in kind of knowing much about trauma or learning about it?
Yeah, so I've been in the mental health for about 5 years now in the industry, but I started probably learning a little bit more before that. But you are right, definitely it's at the forefront now, trauma, mental health, etc. I think because we've got a lot more accessibility to it. Also, we're really fortunate in this time of life that we've got the capacity to be able to process this. If you think back to other generations, they were going through world wars. You know, they were going in World War I, World War II, prior to that, all the other wars. We've got the Vietnam War. There's been so many different wars just in the 1900s. We're very fortunate now that we've not got that going on as much. It's not so prevalent. Yes, there are wars. I'm not saying there isn't wars going on, but we're in a stable place in society to start looking at what's going on emotionally, and we're becoming more aware of how we're behaving and why we're behaving this way, and why is that, where is this coming from, and we're starting to thread back and have a look and go, okay, this could be coming from our childhood. Don't forget, like, psychology didn't really become big until like the 1930s 40s with Carl Jung, etc. So prior to that, there wasn't really much about it. So there's been a lot more work towards that since then, and hypnotherapies come in, you know, around the 80s 90s, NLP in the 90s, etc. So self-development and mental health and has been coming to the forefront of people's minds and what they can do to live a happier, healthier and better life. I think it's really good now that we're in a place in society that we can look at that and go, okay, how can I improve what's going on around me? How can I be a better parent? How can I be a better person? How can I offer a better life for my children? So we're actually very privileged to be in this position, really.
Yeah, exactly. I think is because we're not worrying about food, shelter as much anymore. So it's more about, you know, the wellness of our emotional state.
Absolutely.
So how does trauma actually impact people if they don't resolve them or don't look at them, deal with them, manage them?
It can come out in lots of different ways, Annie. So for me, so I experienced, my trauma started back in the UK in around 2008, and I was attacked and sexually assaulted when I was walking home. And that threw me into a cycle of depression, addiction, so drugs, alcohol, anything to forget and numb the pain. I had extreme anxiety. I struggled to leave the house. It was a really dark time of my life. And unfortunately, I did try and commit suicide. That didn't work, and that was a good thing in a way, because it actually changed my outlook, and I decided that I needed to leave the UK. So I left the UK and I came across to Australia. Now, what I didn't do was address anything that happened to me. I put it in a box, I put a padlock on it, and I sunk it to the depths of the bottom of the sea, and I never wanted to deal with it again. And I came to Australia, and on the outside, I looked like a functioning human being. But on the inside, I was functioning with depression. I had really bad anxiety, paranoia, very insecure, and I had a really bad aggressive eating disorder. And that's how it manifested for me. But I thought that was normal. So when you're going through, and this is what I see with clients as well, people often perceive what's going on in their life as normal, that anxiety is normal, that stress is normal, that, you know, drinking a lot of alcohol is normal. It just becomes your normal because that's what you're dealing with every day. And for me, it wasn't until I finally broke that I realized, and I had a bit of a breakdown, that I realized actually this isn't normal. This is not okay. The anxiety is not okay. The depression is not okay. The numbness is not okay. And that's when I started questioning what was going on and started getting help and moving forward. And I tend to find that with people as well who reach out to me or see me, they go, okay, I'm feeling incredibly numb, or I'm really stressed at work, or it'll be something that's quite standard, like an anxious anxiety or panic attacks or depression or something along those lines. And it's not until we sit down and we start talking and doing the work that you can thread it back to an incident from either childhood or their, you know, teenage years or etc. But they've not actually linked it to that situation. They've just felt that was normal and just carried on coping. So generally people don't realize that their past is impacting their present, and they're just getting on with it, and they're numbing and ignoring and suppressing. But half the time they don't realize they're numbing and ignoring and suppressing. Does that make sense? And it's not until it gets too much, it's not until something happens, maybe the loss of a loved one happens, maybe they lose their job, or maybe they're signed off from work because they've got such bad depression, maybe their marriage breaks down. It starts getting them to think, okay, what is going on here? Why am I acting like this? What is happening? And it'll be usually a push point that someone gets to, a breaking point, as we call it.
I find some people, I often use my husband as an example. And I said, you know, you might want to have a look some of the things in the past. And he said, I don't want to, like what you said, I just want to sink in the ocean. I don't want to look at it.
Yeah.
How? So that's, and also I say, I don't want something really terrible happen to you. Then you'll wake up and you say, oh, I want to look at it. But based on your experience, your clients, and is that normally like something big that happened and then they come to you? Because for me, I didn't. I started looking at just small things.
Yeah.
And I got angry and I thought, well, that's a bit weird. And then I talked to my friends and we talked about it, and we talk about trauma and then things.
So it just depends, Annie. So generally I find the people that come to me, it's something big's happened, or they've got to a point where they can't handle it anymore. Maybe they're at chronic fatigue or complete burnout. So it's usually to like a breaking point. Most people are quite happy putting their head in their sand until something happens. Yeah, and I'm guilty of that. I had my head permanently in the sand, so I understand that. There are people that start, especially because there's a lot more information out there now, especially on, you know, social media. It's easy to access information. Someone might be seeing things on Instagram or your posts, etc., and they might ask a question. So it might not necessarily be a breaking point, but they might start seeing a pattern and be like, oh, hold on a second. Maybe I need to address something because I'm really angry, or, you know, actually, yeah, I've got anxiety, and that's not normal. Because the thing is, anxiety is seen as such a normal thing these days, Annie, which is really scary. A lot of people are, you know, friends who are generally anxious will hang around together because they're anxious. So they think anxiety is normal. But we don't come out of the womb anxious. You know, our original state when we were born was not anxious. Anxiety is a learned behavior through either our parents or something that's happened to us to cause us to be anxious. So, and I find as well with the way that anxiety is dealt with day to day, it's usually, give you a tablet. Let's give you a tablet that will stop you feeling anxious. Tablets and medication are just masking the problem. It's not getting to the root cause. Like, why are you anxious? It's not like you're anxious, let's put a tablet on there, because that's not going to help you. You're just adding to it. You're just keeping on pushing it down. So I do feel the traditional system, the health system, isn't helping with that. We're generally masking. We're not getting to the root cause and getting to the bottom of what's happening, so we can actually get it out in the air and go, okay, this is what's causing it. Let's work on that.
I'm very happy that you're talking about this. Like you're right into it and educating people. And then I feel like for me, exactly what you said, it's because people sharing things, and then other people find out, and then, you know, through one person another. And then I got to know without having to experience like a terrible trauma. But I got a knock on the head with the health though, but that's something else. But for trauma wise, and very interesting. I did find patterns too.
Yeah.
And then notice.
And it's interesting you mentioned something health or physical wise, because that can be another thing that comes through. People's health starts changing. So, you're suppressing all these emotions. So let's not forget, emotions are energy in motion. But when we're suppressing, we're blocking. So when that happens, these energetic balls, we'll just call, are getting stuck in our body, in our cellular body, in our energetic body. And what happens is over time, they're going to start manifesting into something physical, be it, gut health issues. So a lot of people have digestive issues. With women, I see a lot of women with endometriosis, PCOS, again, a manifested symptom. You get people with chronic lower back pain, again, can be down to unsuppressed emotions. People with cancers, anything along those lines is generally something that hasn't been addressed. It's a stagnant energy that's been sitting there.
How do you address that, actually? So, because I feel like I've worked, so I have one very significant, and I feel abandoned. That's big, right? And then I work on that for a long, long time. And then I feel like, oh, that's gone. And then something else came up, small things. Yeah. And then, but the biggest one is the abandonment that I felt. Perhaps it's not, but how I felt as a child. And I feel like I dealt with a lot of them, and I'm in general pretty good. Yeah. And when I'm not so stable, like my emotional state, not so stable, sounds like I'm crazy.
No, I understand.
Yeah. When I'm emotionally not as well, I haven't taken care of myself as well, then I can feel symptoms, like physically, like what you said, manifested outwards. So how do you normally address all the trauma? Because some of the things, and I haven't even knew, like a little things.
First of all, I mean, healing is an onion layer. You're going to keep on pulling out layers and layers and layers. It's never going to end. It just gets easier. It just gets easier, and there's less to do. So there's always layers to the healing. So going back to the root cause of the abandonment, first of all, and healing that major wound, there's always going to be little triggers that come up for you. There's always going to be something that goes, oh, and, pushes on that abandonment wound. And you go, that's that. And you can go back and address it at the next level, either cognitively or energetically, whatever it needs to be. Inner child work is something that's continuous. I'm continually doing inner child work on myself. If I feel a trigger, I'll go back and do some inner child work. And it's that soothing that part of yourself. No one is ever going to be 100% secure. If they say they are, I believe they might be talking BS. But people can be pretty secure in themselves, or they've got the knowledge and the tools to know that when they do get triggered, they've got the awareness to go, okay, that's a trigger. I'm going to go back and I'm going to sort this. That to me is secure. When you're feeling the physical ailments, so what tends to happen is people will put the work in and they'll start doing all the things, the grounding, the meditating, the walks in nature, whatever it is that brings them peace, that, their time to fill their cup, and they'll feel good. And then life will take over and they stop. And because they're feeling good, they stop doing all the things that make them feel good. So the grounding, the walking in nature, the taking time out, whatever it is that you need to do. And then suddenly things start becoming overwhelming. And they forget that they're not doing the things that makes them feel good. And they start getting the physical symptoms. So maybe they'll start getting the anxiety. Maybe they'll start being, oh God, I'm overthinking, or I'm not sleeping well, or whatever it is that's coming through. And it's because they've not continued on with the day, like the things that you need to do, like meditation. For me, meditation, grounding, journaling, I clear my space. They're daily practices for me. They're the same as brushing my teeth. That's something I will not negotiate on.
I like that brushing teeth part. Yeah.
It's important.
That's right. We don't say, oh, we're just going to go out without brushing my teeth. Yeah. But we do go out without meditating or looking after ourselves first.
If you don't brush your teeth are going to rot. If you don't look after your mental health is going to rot. It's the same process. So having some simple processes in place to make sure that you stay stable, as you were saying before, or staying balanced or centered, whatever you want to call it, is so important. Like I notice that when I don't, so I'm generally go to the beach every day, but every now and then I don't go to the beach, and I notice a difference. I'm like, wow, I haven't been to the beach, and I can feel that because the beach is grounding for me. So yeah, it's about recognizing when you fall off and be like, okay, I need to bring that back, rather than letting it escalate out to the point that you've got anxiety or you're not sleeping or, you know, whatever's happening. It can, yeah, just people can come out of alignment really quickly because there's so much going on in our lives. You know, if you've got kids, you've got a family, you've got a job, you've got to cook, you've got to clean, you've got to do housework, you've got to drive, you've got to get the car, you've got to sort out a husband, all the things. And that's even before you've done anything for yourself.
One period of time, a very good period of time, was so good. Like I set the time just to really be with myself. Like, but I love the beach too, and garden. So garden, beach, mountains.
Gardening's great. Yeah.
And then I spend time with myself, but then somehow I would go off the track, and then I go, getting too busy, and sometimes I forget, and I thought, how could I know all this stuff, and then I forgot, and then obviously, and when it manifests outward, and I realize, I need to go back. Why is it so easy for us to get off track? Like, it doesn't take long.
Because we've not been taught these skills from school. So, you know, if you think of it as a child, we were taught every day, you wash your face, you brush your teeth, you wash your face, or you have a shower. That is part of your daily routine, especially brushing your teeth, washing your face, or having a shower. If at school we were taught, or even at home, we were taught every day, you wake up, you meditate, or whenever you want to do it in the day, you meditate 5-10 minutes, you make sure you ground, you go outside, you play, you do the gardening, or you go to the beach. If that was part of your daily activity from childhood, you wouldn't be forgetting. If this was instilled from us from a young age, it would just be life. But because especially our generation wouldn't have had this from a younger age. I know there are kids now and families that are way more aware and conscious, and they are teaching their kids this, which is great, because this is going to be amazing for the generations to come. But for our generations who weren't taught this is something that we have to keep on remembering every day and going, okay, this is part of my life. This is what I have to do. This is part of my routine every day. And it has to be, you know, it's like a memory. You have to create the muscle memory and keep doing it every day. It's just the same as going to the gym. If you weren't an active child, if you didn't go and do sports as a kid, or maybe you just sat at home and watched TV or whatever it was, then setting time aside to go to the gym is going to be troubling for you, because it wasn't instilled in you as a child. Physical exercise wasn't instilled into you as a child. So whatever, it's really true, like whatever we got those 0 to 8 years old are our core beliefs, our core systems. So brushing your teeth, washing your face, having a shower, they're your core systems that you'll carry through your life. That's why the learning, like the unlearning of the wounds from childhood can take time, because it's peeling off the layers, because it's a core learning from that 0 to 8. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect sense. So how do, as adults, so it's more of a routine, right? What you're saying is to set a routine and then follow it every day without even thinking about it. So like brushing teeth, we don't think much about it. That's what I, like 2 days ago, and I wrote in my journal, from today on, I'm going to meditate first and exercise first before I do anything else. That's why normally my meeting starts at 10, so I don't do anything before 10. You said that you had a traumatic experience and then you moved. Is that because how you kind of escaped and then you came to Australia? Okay. So how did you make? How did that accident make you feel?
So the sexual assault, it was a really dark time, because I remember after when it happened, I couldn't quite process what had happened. I just went into shock, was very numb. I was very lonely at the time. The people I was living with were away, because I was living in student halls, like student accommodation, and they were all away. So I was on my own. My parents didn't live anywhere near me. And it was a really lonely time, and I was really struggling. I was very scared. I remember being really, really scared. And things got a bit easier. Like I moved home and I moved in with a different friend, but I was just masking the whole time. So the person that I was living with didn't know that I was off work. So I was signed off work with stress and anxiety. I was having constant panic attacks. I was on high sleeping meds because I couldn't sleep. I was so scared. I just wasn't functioning. I was like a zombie. I remember being a zombie, and I just lived, when my friends came over, I would drink and take drugs because I just didn't want to be in that life. I just wanted to forget. I didn't want to think about it. I just needed to I couldn't face it. And I remember someone saying to me, you need to go and have some counseling. And I was like, no, I don't. What do you mean? That's ridiculous. And I remember, you know, having the number and calling, and then I was like, no, I don't need to see a counselor. And that went on for some time, that I'd call and put the phone down. I'd call and put the phone down. The fear of actually going to see someone was big, was really, really big.
What are you afraid of?
Talking about what happened, having to face it, having to relive it. That was like, I just wanted to forget it. I just wanted to forget it ever happened. I didn't want to think about him, what he did, how I felt, all that kind of stuff. It was hard, you know, it was really hard. And it got so hard that I tried to kill myself. It was just too much. And I was so overwhelmed with it. And I can see, you know, it's so sad because I see so many stories of the same thing, where people get so overwhelmed with what's happened to them, they just can't cope. And the only way out is suicide. And it's terrible. It's so sad that people don't feel that they can talk about it, or they don't have the support. And it's a really incredibly dark time for people.
Why did you feel like you couldn't talk to your parents, or talk about it and talk to the counselors? And why do you think we can't talk about it even now, or some people?
Yeah, I think so. With my parents, I wasn't very close to my parents, so I didn't talk to them. They didn't even know that I was going through. They knew that it had happened, but they didn't know that they didn't know I was off work. They didn't know I was, you know, on tablets. They didn't know I was drinking, taking drugs. They didn't know any of it. So I kept that very much to myself. Talking, like, the fear of talking to the counselor again was just reliving it. I just wanted to forget it had happened. Hence why, you know, drinking, drugs, it's all a coping mechanism for not being able to process what's happened to you. So people that go through like a trauma like sexual assault, or a PTSD like war and things like that, generally people don't want to relive what's happening. They don't want to go through what they went through again, because it's that fear. It was such a scary thing that happened. It's that fear of having it to come out, and having to acknowledge it, having to admit it. And especially with sexual assault, there's so much shame that can be around sexual assault, so much guilt. I blamed myself for a really long time. I had a really awful time with the police. They weren't very helpful at all. So there was so much that happened that made me feel like it was my fault. And I find that time and time again, when I see clients that have had sexual assault and sexual abuse, that they often blame themselves. There's a very big stigma around sexual assault and sexual abuse, and that the person who's actually the victim is often blamed, not the perpetrator.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Obviously that wouldn't help.
No, it's not ideal.
No. So you kind of ran away from the UK and then came to Australia, but that didn't really resolve anything.
No. So I was functioning. And able to go to work. And I literally, after I tried to commit suicide, I don't know, something switched in me that I was like, right, I need to get out of here. I need to leave. And I don't know if it was my spirit guides or my higher self or whatever was like, hey, love, this is not time for you to check out. You've got work to do. But yeah, it gave me a bit of a zest for life again. I was like, right, I need to get out of the UK and I need to start again. So my main focus was leave the UK and start afresh and just forget it had all happened. And I could just, in my mind, I was like, it's in the UK. It doesn't matter. I can leave it all behind. But that's not how it works, because like we were talking, there's still all that suppressed emotion, those feelings, everything, memories, and they just started festering and growing into, you know, more depression, into anxiety, into I had a very aggressive eating disorder. I was functioning on the outside, but inside I was very, very not good.
And how did you get out of that?
So things got really bad. My marriage broke down, and I had a bit of a spiral downwards, and I ended up in a bad place. But I ended up taking some mushrooms, magical mushrooms, psilocybin, and I'd taken mushrooms before. But in the UK, there's a very big drug and party culture, so it's something I'd done before, and it was as a recreational thing, but it catapulted me into a different world. I left all my friends. And it was a kick up the bum to my spiritual awakening, and it opened up a lot for me. And it came at like all this healing needed to come out, and it took me on a magical journey, which I will never forget. And it was a really beautiful experience, and that opened me up to spirituality. That opened me up to, okay, there is a lot more to this than just this vessel that I'm in. There is energies, there is higher dimensions, there is all this other stuff going on around me that I never believed. I was very shut off to that. So that took me down that road. And then I started doing healing. So then I started looking into alternative healings. I started looking into counseling. I started looking into different things. And then through the different healings, I started opening up, but not straight away. It wasn't about my sexual assault straight away. It was about other things that had gone on in my life, first of all. And then layer by layer, and then finally the sexual assault came out. And do you know what? I remember the first time I actually said it in a room full of women, and it was during one of my shamanic training sessions. And I remember saying to them, I don't know what we just had to say something. And I remember saying, I've got to tell you all that I've been sexually assaulted. And I hadn't said it for probably 8 years. And I just burst into tears. It was a very big release, and actually admitting to people, because I didn't really tell anyone. So when I lived in Australia, even my ex-husband didn't know that I'd been assaulted. No, I didn't tell anyone. It was just something that didn't happen in my mind. So saying it open to a group was very empowering, and it actually allowed me to then start, okay, I need to process this. I actually need to acknowledge the fact that something awful happened, and I need to process it and move past it. So that's what happened there. And then, yeah, I started moving past that and accepting it. And it's something I can talk about very easily. It's just something that happened in my life. It's not something that controls me anymore. And now I really have passion in helping other people who have been through similar, circumstances as well.
So the magic mushroom actually is magic or magical?
Absolutely. 100%. I would not be where I am without psilocybin. It is a very powerful healing medicine. I don't say to people, run out there and go get it. That's not what I'm condoning, because obviously it is a controlled substance, but there is healing powers in psychedelics. And I think it's really exciting that Australia is starting to look at that for therapy, for PTSD, for depression. I think that's an amazing step forward for the mental health industry. I know it's legal now in other countries, which is absolutely fabulous. So yeah, I think it's a really positive step in the right direction.
I feel like I have a very strong faith in God, and I feel that for me, it's like all the drugs that people take, or the mushroom that people take, and like a meditation. And I recently have experienced breath work, and I never tried breath work. And I feel that also kind of a similar to the meditation that I normally do, but on a collective level with a group of other people, it felt just the energy. I guess meditation is the same thing if you do it collectively.
Yeah.
So I guess everyone has a different experience. And for me, it's like how, I don't know, I'm a good girl. I don't drink, I don't smoke, and I don't do any of those stuff. And how I look at it, again, not saying I'm better or good or anything. Because everyone has different experience. For me, is how I look at it. I can experience all this fun stuff without doing all the drugs or drinking. Because I normally ask them, why do you like drinking, my friends and people, right? And they say, because it makes me happy. And then I feel like I don't have to that. But again, saying everyone has their own journey.
Yeah. I think I don't drink or take drugs or anything now. Like I'm completely sober. I'm like you. I don't need alcohol to make me have a good time. I don't smoke. It's not something that appeals to me, but in my past it has. And that's because I was suppressing and numbing so much. So generally, and I'm not saying this for everyone who's watching this, I'm not saying if you're drinking or taking drugs that you are suppressing a trauma, but generally people who are drinking and taking drugs are running away from something, I would say. So I think it's amazing. Like I'm really happy that you haven't had to do that, and that you've always felt happy in yourself and stable in yourself that you didn't need to have drugs or alcohol to forget what's going on. That's really beautiful. And I hope more people can have lives like that, because I think alcohol is one of the biggest issues that we have in society at the moment. It's so readily available and so socially accepted, yet it's probably one of the biggest killers, one of the biggest issues with mental health, with physical health. It's crazy. So there's no positives to alcohol. But yet it's something that's absolutely woven into our culture, into Western culture. You know, it's huge in the UK. It's been, you know, alcohol's been around since, gosh, I can't remember when it actually dates back to, but there is like, it's been in society for a very, very long time, to celebrate, to commiserate, to mourn. It's just part of life. It's not so much in Eastern culture, I believe, but I know in Western culture it's been around for a very, very long time. So that makes it more socially acceptable that we just eat and we drink to be merry, we drink to forget, we drink to, you know, whatever it is, to mourn. And it's just become very acceptable, not really realizing what the impacts of alcohol on our system. They're not great. Like, alcohol kills brain cells at a rate like no other. It's damaging to our livers and our kidneys. It's literally killing cells, yet people down it at a rate of knots like it's water. And I know I used to do the same thing. So, and it was part of the culture growing up.
That's it, the culture. It is a culture. In China, the same. Yeah. Like, a man drink just very heavily, socially, and in any circumstances. And but women did not as much, but these days it's still like men. I think men, when I haven't been in China for a long time, but when I was there, and I just knew, like, my dad was a heavy drinker, but he was a happy drunk. It's like what you said. It's socially, it's because anything, you celebrate something, you drink. Very similar to, I think, to the Western world. But it's, I guess everyone has a different journey. Perhaps some people will need to go through being numbed, and then something happens, like you had experience, and you had a positive experience with the mushroom. So everyone we're all on a different journey. I'm grateful.
100%. And like you say, everyone's different. Everyone's got a different story. Everyone's got a different experience, and that's what makes it all perfect, because we're all different. We're all here to experience life in all its glory, the good, the bad, and everything in between. So yeah, it's great that people are experiencing life in different ways. It doesn't have to be. Imagine if we all experienced life in the same way, how boring it would be.
I know, that's what I often say. Imagine we're all dressed the same, we're that talk the same way. That's it. I love the diversity. Exactly. Back to how you resolve your trauma. So you talked about it in that shamanic meeting, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay, and then that was a start, or how did you
so that
go
just
from
kind
there?
of opened it up. So it was the first time I'd spoken about it to people since it had probably happened, and it just, the sense of relief saying it out loud was huge. It's like something, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. And then that was when I had to start feeling it. So I had to start feeling the feelings and the emotions that I'd pushed away. So acknowledging the fear, acknowledging the pain, acknowledging the fact of what actually happened to me. Instead of just ignoring it, I had to actually go, okay, this happened. This was real. I experienced that, and I need to feel it rather than just ignore it. So that was a process in itself. That didn't just happen overnight, obviously.
Were you guided by anybody?
Yes and no, not really. I've always been someone that's kind of done things on my own, which is probably a good and a bad thing, because the good thing is that I've now learned through all my different healings that a great way to move and transform is through multimodality. I did have support from friends, and I did so when with the shaman, she helped me. So I had someone to talk to, and obviously the ladies that I'd spoken to there. I had a hypnotherapist lady that I used to see as well, so that she was someone that I would go and speak to. But I did it in chunks. It was not just this process. It happened over time, and it was a lot of learning my own way, learning what So a lot of the integration work that I give my clients is stuff that I've learned through my own learning. I never got given that. I never got given integration work, but I found tools that actually help you process quicker. And I give that to my clients. I'm like, okay, if we want to move this quicker, let's give you these tools so that you don't have to sit in it. Because I sat in my stuff for a long time, and I thought, this sucks. Why am I sitting in it so much? How do I make it shift quicker? Because you can, at the end of the day, it's energy. It doesn't have to sit there. You're choosing to sit in it. We're choosing to sit in our pain if we want to. So once you acknowledge an emotion and a feeling, and you've acknowledged it, it processes, it goes out. Obviously, there's still the cognitive memories going on, so you have to address that at another level. Does this make sense?
Yeah, perfect sense.
Yeah, so it was a bit of a journey.
Yeah, so you did have help, you did have support. You did,
it wasn't like I was just, but I didn't have a one-on-one person that I'd speak to every week about what's going on, or how, it was a very drawn out. This was over a couple of years that I did this. It was a very drawn out process. And that's why with what I offer people is that one-on-one support, because I know that once we start working together and it starts coming out, we can start, okay, this is what's coming out for you. Let's go down this route and we'll do this week. And then they can call me during the week and be like, okay, this is coming up for me. I'm feeling this, and I can give them help there. And then we have our next session and go, okay, this week, let's do some somatic work, because it seems to be sitting in your body. So when we release that, that's going to give you some relief there. So it's all very much individually tailored to the person, and we're working it week by week. So after the 8 weeks, someone's gone from, depression and anxiety to feeling amazing and moving forward. Like I had a lady that couldn't leave her house because her anxiety was so bad due to, and like COVID had sort of exacerbated that and made it worse. So we worked together to alleviate her anxiety. By week 4, she was going into the office to work again, and she hadn't worked in the office for over 6 months. So like a lot can happen in a short space of time with the right help. Yeah. Whereas some people were like myself, if I'd had a me, I could have probably worked through my stuff a lot quicker rather than it taking years to work through.
Oh, wow. Okay. So yeah. How do you, so when people come to you and then you find out what the, I guess, probably more symptoms to start with, and then you go address like what you said about peeling the onion. So you go through, how long do people need to work with you in order to get some sort of results?
Just depends on what's going on. So if it's usually, so I've got an 8-week program, and usually by that 8 weeks, people have completely changed their life around. I've had people come off antidepressants, not through me. Obviously, I don't say come off antidepressants. That's through talking to their doctor or their psychiatrist and coming off the medication in the way that they're directed. But because we've done the work over the 8 weeks, they've then felt, right, I don't need to be on antidepressants anymore. And they've come off their depressants. I've had people, like I said, the lady with the anxiety, she's gone back to work. She's now completely okay, doesn't have to stay in the house. She's goes out and socializes. I actually heard from her not so long ago. I had a lady that had a very abusive relationship, and she had been single for about 3 or 4 years. She's now, so it's been 4 or 5 months since we worked together. She's now in a happy and healthy relationship, and she hadn't been in one for like 3 or 4 years. So people, we have the 8 weeks, and then people carry on, because what I really pride myself in is teaching people tools and processes that they can then carry on after we have finished. I want to empower my clients. I don't want them to keep coming back to me time and time again without making any process. I want to see change in process. So obviously there's always work. So sometimes people will come and do a masterclass that I'm doing, or some people will come and do like something around a container that I'm doing or whatever. But generally, I don't want people coming back for 8-week processes all the time, because that's the whole idea, is to shift and transform someone. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you give them all the tools, and then that means they can look after themselves. Yeah. Then, but if there's anything happens again, because like what you said, it's a lifelong journey. Right?
Yep, they can.
But they can come back, and then 100%. Maybe not, instead of going through the 8 weeks, they may do a 1 session.
Yeah,
is that correct. How that works?
Yep. So I do single sessions as well, or like people can group them and do like 2 or 3 if they're wanting. So there's lots of flexibility around. And like you say, people will go away and they'll be feeling amazing for 6 months, and something else might come up. And that's the nature of the beast. There is no one pill and you're done, or 8 weeks and you're done forever. There is an ongoing cycle that you're committed to, and you're like, okay, I might just need to go and have a little top up. Or sometimes I get people come back and they're like, oh, I'm just going to have a shamanic healing because I feel energetically I'm a bit blocked. Or people might come back and go, actually, I'm having this is going on, what do you reckon we should do? So it just depends. Everyone's really different. But the idea of the 8 weeks is to teach people tools so that they can continue on their journey, so they're feeling empowered in their life, not disempowered.
How does a shamanic healing work?
So shamanic healing, so that's so generally we sit down and have a conversation about what's going on. Once we've had that conversation, I start the healing. So the person will lay down. It's a really nice time for them to relax and receive. They have a nice eye mask on, some nice relaxing music. And then I work through their energetic body. So I'll clear out any emotional blocks that might be sitting in the body. I'll clear out any attachments or lower vibrational energies that are hanging around. I have a look at past lives that might be interfering in this lifetime. I check down the ancestral lines to see if there's anything being pulled through, because we can pull through trauma from our ancestral lines. I have a look to see if there's any soul gifts that need to be activated. I call back any soul parts from this lifetime. So that's creating that the energetic body is more sustainable and full, because what can happen is as we go through emotional wounds or we go through traumas, etc., we can disconnect certain parts of ourselves to save ourselves. So especially with childhood traumas, people can disconnect parts of themselves. So I go and get those parts back. They're called soul parts. Receiving any messages from guides, receiving in messages from ancestors. Every healing is so different. There's no one size fits all. It's a very different for everyone. And they're always really interesting as well, what comes through.
I'm trying to make a sense of it. I actually haven't experienced it before. Is that like kind of like a Reiki or similar to Reiki?
Yeah, so it's an energy healing, but on a much deeper level. So Reiki's generally working on energy centers, whereas shamanic, you're actually going to different, like clearing ancestral trauma. You're clearing blocks within the body and realigning chakra points. You're realigning the meridian energetics. You're seeing if there's any blocks of emotions around the meridians. You're looking at past lives energetically. You're looking at ancestral lines energetically. So yes, it's similar, but different. Generally people as well. So then I give integration work after the shamanic, because especially if people have been blocking stuff, they've not been feeling their emotions, they can go on a bit of an emotional roller coaster afterwards, because that's it coming out. So then I give them the integration tools to allow them to process that.
Obviously you've done all the training, you experienced, and then you've done all the things. I'm just trying to get a idea of how do you do all this stuff? Like, how do you get in tune with people's energy? You're kind of like a medium too?
Yes, I get messages from past loved ones. It's all energy at the end of the day, so we're all energy. So when I go into a healing space, I tune into a different energetic plane, and I'm reading their energy levels. I'm reading where their blocks are. I can feel their blocks. I can see their blocks. It's all in the third eye, and it's all through feeling as well. So yeah, it's very hard to explain. It's basically working on in different energetic planes and feeling to people's energetic body. So I can do a healing on someone and they don't have to be in the same room as me, as long as I've got permission to go into their energy. I have clients all over the world. So you can do the energetic healings. It doesn't make any difference. That absolutely blows people's minds when you tell them that sometimes, because they're like, how are you doing that? It's all energy. It's that's the simplest way of saying it. It's all energy, and it'll be just as accurate on someone that's living in the UK as to someone who's here in my room. Like it's exactly the same.
You know the doctor, the Hawaii, Ho'oponopono.
Oh yeah.
He did similar things, right? He literally, he didn't even see anybody. He was just clearing the energy himself in his room or wherever he was. And is that kind of similar kind of thing?
Yep, very, very similar.
How do you get you there? And I'm very curious about this.
It's a state of mind, I suppose. It's when I channel, I'm not, I mean, I've obviously got my physical body, but I'm not in my physical body. So when I'm doing a healing, I'm here, but I'm not here.
I want to go experience something like this. I've never experienced. Well, actually, when I was little, back in China, and my mom and dad, I guess in the old days we call them superstitious.
Yes. Yeah.
But I believe there's messages. There's a people, obviously, like anything. There's a people who were doing, different levels, right?
Yeah.
And there's people like my mom and my aunties and my grandpa, they were really into those things. And then they would go, if someone passed, and then they would go talk to someone pretty much like a medium. And then they will share the messages from the other side. And I was wondering, how do they have that ability? How do they get to have that ability? Do they develop it? Is that natural?
We've all got the ability. We're born with the abilities, but a lot of us forget those abilities through, depending on our upbringing, if your parents believe in those kind of things, societal beliefs. So as a child, I remember having certain gifts, but I remember dumbing them down or being scared of them. And then it was sort of like my parents weren't really of that mind. They were very, what's the word? Skeptics, I would say. And so, it was something that I dumbed down. It wasn't something that then came out later on. So it's something I've developed since being on my spiritual awakening. And it's always been there. It's just remembering. Anyone can do it. So anyone can do energy work. It's just being tapped into yourself and tapped in energetically to trust and believe yourself. And it takes time, because I remember when it first started coming through and I was getting messages for people, and I'd say to them, hey, so-and-so has come through to me, I need to tell you this. And then look at me and go, how do you know that? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm just telling you. So it comes through time and time again, like when people understand and know what you're saying, and they're like, how do you know that? Or, yeah, my grandma did have that necklace. Where did she put it? And I'll be telling them where they've put, you can find it, and they go and find the necklace, or, things like that. And you're like, okay, well, this is obviously real, because I'm not making this up. But it can be at the start like a bit of disbelief, because you're like, where is this coming from? Especially with the healings. Like I'd be doing a healing and I'm like, okay, there's something going on in this person's arm and I can't quite work out what it is. And I'd talk to them afterwards, and they're like, oh yeah, I've got an implant in my arm. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes perfect sense. So it takes time of developing your skills. It's not just like, poof, download, you can do it all. It's taken years of me working and doing it all, and it continues to grow every day.
So interesting. Yeah. I'm very fascinated about it. I'm gonna experience it.
You have a session.
How a shaman, is that a actual a person, like, for example, you can be a shaman, or is that a spiritual guide?
Shamans have been around for thousands of years in indigenous cultures. They're a medicine man or a medicine woman. Generally, there would be a shaman in a tribe of people, and they were the person that the tribe would go to for healing. So that might be plant medicine, or it might be energetic work, whatever need. They were very much more in tap with that when, thousands of years ago. So they would go to this one person for their healing. So shamans have come from indigenous cultures. Shamanism, obviously, now I call myself a Western shaman. I'm not an indigenous shaman, because I'm not an indigenous person. I call myself a Western shaman, and I think any kind of energetic or alternative healing is really needed in the Western world at the moment, because we're so disconnected from ourselves. I believe that Eastern cultures have kept a lot of their connection to nature, their connection to the land, etc. But Western civilization has become very lost on that. They don't even know how to grow their own food. Most kids these days don't even know where carrots come from, or it's quite scary in that respect. So we're very disconnected as a society now from not only the land but also ourselves. And I think with the work that I'm doing with the mind, body and spirit practice, is helping people to come back to themselves. The reason that we're seeing so much depression and anxiety and everything is because people are out of alignment. They're out of alignment with who they are. And it's really interesting when you watch them go on their journey, that they then become a different person, but it was the person that they've always meant to be, that whole person. the person that loves themselves, the person that respects and knows their worth, the person that is full of love and happiness, because that's what we are at our core. You know, at our core we are love, but many of us are disconnected from love because of what, you know, our experiences through life, be it trauma, be it pain or loss or whatever it is. We disconnect from love, and then I find when we disconnect from love, which is self-love, we're disconnected from ourselves, and then that comes out in all these different ways of anxiety. This is, you know, very basic of like anxiety, depression, etc.
Do you know, I'm very excited when I talk to you, because it's you in particular. I don't know how it's like you talking about this. It's so passionate, and I am too. And I just feel like, oh wow, the world. There's so many people now talking about. That's why I'm so, I guess, so passionate about this podcast. Is really people come in and sharing their passion and how they all want to make this world a better place. Imagine everybody is like, I am love, and then you wouldn't want to hurt anybody.
I agree, but there's also the other dynamic to it though. So the world is built on polarity, so light, dark, love, hate, you know, plus, minus, positive, negative. There's polarity everywhere. So there's always going to be the opposite side to love, because we can't exist without it. So I personally, I believe, this is my belief, and I, you know, everyone's welcome to take from what they want, but I always believe there is going to be love and hate in the world. I always believe there's going to be love and fear, because without it, we can't exist. We can't exist without polarity. So there's a lot of talk in the spiritual community about, you know, us going to live in just unconditional love. But to me, I don't see that happening in the world, because if we wanted to live in unconditional love, we'll just go back to source, which is unconditional love. We're down here we're experiencing love, hate, fear, anger, everything we're here to experience. And there's always going to be a polarity, maybe not so much because there is a lot going on, but I always believe there is going to be the light and the dark, because without it, you know, you can't have darkness without light, and you can't have light without darkness.
Oh, wow. Okay. So for me, that sounds like you're embracing everything.
Absolutely. You can't deny the shadows. That's why like shadow work is so important as well. Those embracing those parts of you that you don't particularly like, because in there, if you start leaning into your shadow, in leaning into the parts of that you're hiding, that's when you can fully love and accept yourself.
What about when, sorry, keep going.
No, you're gone. No, you go.
What about when there's all light, then there's no shadow, there's no darkness?
How can there be no shadow without light? When there's
right
light,
now it's sunlight, and I'm in a shadow. I'm in a shade, and I'm not in the sun.
Yeah, so there's always going to be light and shade or dark. They can't exist without each other. So the shade, I mean, there's different aspects. Like I suppose there's talks of people saying that we will ascend to 5D, and that there isn't so much of a polarity there. So maybe that's what it's taught. Like, you know, who knows? We don't really know what is going on. It's all hearsay, isn't it? Yeah. And you've got to go with what you believe. Yes. But I currently feel like where we are right now in the 3D world on Earth, that there has to be polarity for us to exist. There's male. Sorry, I mean, like there's male, female, you know, plus, minus. Look at the poles in the planet. You've got the positive, negative poles in magnets. You know, there's always an opposite side to everything. One of my friends actually used the plus and minus. I really liked it, and I'm trying to remember what she said. Basically, plus can be minus on the other side. It's like I say I love plants. So butterflies are beautiful, but caterpillars are not my favorite. Yeah, and then snails and slugs. When I was in Melbourne, that was a big thing for the garden because they destroyed everything. The snails and slugs. But then there's people, and then I was saying to my friends, and one day someone shared, "Oh, beautiful snails." And I said, "Yes, they're beautiful outside in my garden. They're beautiful, but not in my garden." So they could be. That could be like the snails are up minus in my garden, but plus outside. So it could be one thing. It's not necessarily black and white, but one thing can be black and white. Yeah. So like you think about shadow work, people say like our shadow side or our side, like, you know, people say jealousy is a bad thing. So if you're a jealous person or jealousy comes up, generally people reject jealousy. They're like, oh, I don't want to feel jealous. But if you actually lean into the jealousy, because obviously all emotions are valid, there are no negative emotions. They're all just telling you a story. If you lean into the jealousy and go, okay, jealousy, what am I jealous about? Where is this coming from? You can then work out, okay, where's my insecurity? Why am I feeling insecure that I'm jealous? Or why is this person triggering me to feel jealous? What is it? And you use that to work on yourself to then alleviate the jealousy. Then jealousy is a good thing, because you're seeing that it needs work. And also jealousy is a great thing because it will make you work harder. If you're jealous of someone's success, you can use that as a positive and go, do you know what? I'm going to work my ass off and I'm going to be just as successful. It doesn't have to be a bad, like people paint jealousy as this really bad thing. But so that's your shadow side, and you're seeing it as a dark side, but it can also come into the light because you can use it as a positive.
Okay, so that's really very much like I see challenges as opportunities.
Yeah, perfect. It's just the script that you're playing. So if you're looking at things in a different light, some people would see challenges as a really bad thing, but oh God, not again. Why is this happening to me? Whereas like yourself, you're like, okay, cool. What am I learning from this? How can I grow? So there's always ways to look at different things.
I consider myself very spiritual, not so much religious, but I do go to church. Now, I love the church community. Everyone feels safe in there. You know, nobody's perfect, right? We're all imperfect people trying to do the best, to be kind, to be loving, to be all the things that we want to be. But there's things that people may do things that we don't like, or, you know, disagreement, and you have your opinion, I have mine. But I love that community. Love is still the center. Now, I'm sure you mean actually, I don't. I'm not assuming anything. So your polarity for me is I look at it, for example, the war. People getting into really hated debate, and then make the world looks not as kind place to live. Everyone's different. That's why it's interesting. But I still like the light. That's why I let your light shine. I like the light. So for you, you embrace all, even the darkest things. For example, killing. For example, raping. For example, what other things? Wars.
As a shaman, that's something that shamans will do. Will embrace it all, the dark and the light. I think personally, I feel being able to accept the dark has helped me be able to live in the light in a better way. So I accept my darkness. I accept what's happened. I accept that there is bad things going on in the world, or what we deem as bad, because when you get down to it, like, we've created the labels around what's right or wrong, what is good or bad. If we just treat it as an experience, it becomes a completely different label.
Oh, I love that. That's what I want to. And so lastly is about the experience. But before that, back to the gardening, I was killing the bugs. And then I thought I was Hitler. So that minute I feel like, okay, so Hitler was no different than me. Just he is killing human. I'm killing bugs. Yeah. And then because I consider they are bad for my garden, and then Hitler considered Jews were bad for the humanity. So it's the same thing. It's just different. Yeah. So experience. How did you get to that? And actually, no, I'm going to read this part that you said. I really love it. This one too. The meaning of life to experience. Can you elaborate on that?
My belief, and obviously people take what they resonate with. I believe that I've come down from source energy. We've all come here from source energy, and where source energy is here to experience. So to experience the good, the bad, the everything in between, it's all an experience. And we've chosen to label it. So we choose that. We've said that happiness and money and, you know, wealth and living out in the country is happiness, is good for us. And we're labeling that, arguing and scarcity and, hunger is bad, right? But if you look at it in its purest form, that source has come down to experience. Source wants to experience everything, the good and the bad, the hardship, the easy times, the love, the hate, the fear, the everything. So once we start accepting that we're here experiencing, I have personally found life to become a lot easier. There's a really good book called Existential Kink. She really explains around how the soul wants, or your soul is here to experience, and we can see that through what keeps getting attracted into people's lives. It's another form of shadow work, and it's a very, very interesting book if people want to have a read, and she explains it very, very well. But I love that, because actually facing some of my experiences and seeing them as, oh, actually my part of me wanted to experience that, has helped me, is actually empowered me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. How does having such a belief that life is about, or just about experience, it's the process, it's a journey, not about an end destination or the end results. How does that change yourself and your life?
I found it really freeing. Because I get to, if I'm here experiencing, then I'm going to choose to experience it at my deepest levels, all of it. So when I am feeling maybe flat or sad, I'm going to experience it and move through it. I'm not going to deny it or ignore it. When I'm feeling happy, I'm going to be super grateful for it. And I'm going to be grateful each time I walk out the door and it's a beautiful day. It's raining. I'm going to be grateful that it's raining, and I might dance in the rain. It's just a freeing experience. I live very differently to how I used to. I used to see the world in with very different eyes. And I can honestly say, the way I look at the world now, I am probably I am the happiest I've ever been. And I feel like I'm the freest I've ever been, in the fact that I see life in a very different way to a lot of people, I suppose. Is it right or wrong? I don't know, but it certainly has helped me, and I feel empowered in my life. I feel like I'm creating my life. Life's not happening to me. I'm creating what's going on. And I like that. I like that. And that means I'm responsible for what's going on in my life. So if something isn't how I want it, then what am I going to do to make the change so that it is how I want it? It's more of I'm empowered in my life. I'm not disempowered in my life.
That's kind of like a detachment too. You're not attached to anything in particular.
Yeah.
When we attach to it and we get disappointed.
Absolutely. Any time, and I'm not saying I'm superhuman, because there are times that I'll get attached to an outcome, or I might, there's something that I really want. I'm like, oh my God, I would love that. And I'm like, hold on, Claire, just chill. It's all good. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's all, whatever happens is perfect. It's about, and it's constantly being aware of where my mind is going. And you know what? There's days where it is hard, and others. There's days where I do feel low and I feel emotional and I want life to change. And I'm like, okay, let's feel this, and then let's work on how we can change it. So whereas previously in the past, if I felt sad, I probably would have drank, or I would have, gone out and partied, and I would have ignored it. And then I would have been even more sad and even more like disconnected and wondering why my life wasn't going where I wanted it to go, and was very much in the, oh my God, this is just how it is. Like, life is so shit to me. Whereas now I'm like, okay, if something's not, like I said, if something's not how I want it, what can I do to change it? How am I going to get to the place that I want to be?
Okay, so you embrace everything, you go through things, but you still like to be in one side. So like you said, polarity, right? One side and another side. You still prefer to be, for example, to be happy rather than sad, to be grateful rather than be resentful, or whatever the opposites are.
Absolutely. Feeling like resentful is not nice, is it? It's not a great feeling, and that's why people move away, because it feels horribly like, oh, that's why am I resentful, and I'm angry, or whatever it is. But what I found is, if I lean into the resentment or the anger and ask the question, where is this coming from, that's when I can relieve it, and I can release it, and it goes, and then I can go back to, okay, cool, this is good. Yeah. About actually listening to my body, listening to my emotions, and working with them rather than against them, and trying not to, and not controlling them, and allowing them to flow.
Yeah, I do see there's a space for, challenges and things, because they do push us and help us learn. But I still prefer the happy state and to be in the light, because I like the light. And dark, yeah, we do need a dark. Otherwise, we can't go to sleep, or it would probably be harder to go to sleep. Is there anything in particular that you wish I had asked?
No, I think this has been amazing. I've loved the questions. I've really enjoyed connecting with you. It's been great.
Yeah. Do you have a final message for everybody?
If anybody's listening and they're going through a particularly tough time, or if they're searching for answers, then to keep on searching, because you will find your answers. And life does get easier if you're going through a tough time. It doesn't have to always be hard and tough. And actually facing your past, or whatever's happened to you, or whatever you feel has happened, is nowhere near as bad as when it originally happened. Nowhere near as bad. I think in hindsight, I really wish I had processed my stuff a lot sooner, but I wouldn't be here as I am today. So it's all perfect at the end of the day. Everything has its perfect trajectory. But yeah, time and time again, I speak to clients as well, and they're like, why didn't I do this sooner? Why didn't I do this sooner? I'm like, yeah, I know. I know. And it is that, but we're stuck in fear because we think it's going to be a lot worse, when in reality it's not. It's a hell of a lot better.
My prayer has been to open my heart, open my mind, open my eyes, and open my ears. So just
Beautiful.
Embrace all, and then it will just come. How can people reach you?
So I have I'm on Instagram, on Facebook, and I have a website. I've sent you the links and everything, so if people want to reach out, they're more than welcome. You can send me a DM and we can all arrange a call, or you can even book them on my website as well if you'd just like to have a chat about how I could help you or what's going on in your life. So I have the one-on-one sessions for 8 weeks or individual. I also have containers that are online that come out very regularly. I also do in-person events as well. So everything's always changing and growing. So best to just follow on my Instagram and see what's happening.
Beautiful. The healing, is that just emotional or physical or everything?
It's everything really. So emotions are connected to physical. So a lot of times, like I said, I'll have women or people in general that come to me, especially women with womb issues like endometriosis and PCOS. So that's a physical ailment. And then when we start working together, they start seeing changes and improvements in those conditions. So yeah, it's all connected. It's all connected. And there is obviously outside sources that can cause illness, especially with cancers and stuff. There is, using our phones and the chemicals, etc. They definitely contribute, but there is a connection to our emotional welfare as well.
Yeah. Okay. So if someone had trauma or something, but normally, because I know emotionally it will manifest outward, like physically.
Yeah.
So but it could be also emotional issues. For example, you talked about depression.
Yeah.
And anxiety, all those things. That's emotional. So you can help heal those ones, or they have physical diseases, and then so it's a very similar kind of tools, and then but you work together and
they're connected.
Yeah. Okay.
It's all connected.
Beautiful. Oh, thank you so much, Claire. I really appreciate. I love talking to you. Thanks for shining your light.
Thank you so much for seeing me as well. It's been great connecting with you.
Let your light shine. Help others find their way out of the darkness. Extraordinarily inspiring stories from ordinary people like you and I. I believe we are all extraordinary, yet we're all ordinary. Let your light shine.